My daughter-in-law smiled and said, "We already hired movers for your stuff." I hadn't agreed to move. My son added, "Mom, you'll love the nursing home." I stayed calm, pulled out my phone, and made one call. The next morning, they were the ones packing their bags screaming, "How is this possible?" Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The shears were in my hand, their familiar weight a comfort, when the low purr of a foreign engine broke the afternoon quiet. I looked up from my Madame Hardy rose, its white blooms just beginning to unfurl, and saw Marcus's silver sedan glide to the curb. It was a Tuesday. He never visited on a Tuesday. Chloe's silhouette was sharp in the passenger seat. A cold thread, fine as spider silk, traced its way down my spine. I set the shears down on the stone path and wiped my hands on my gardening apron. By the time I reached my front porch, they were already at the steps. Marcus carried a cardboard box from a boutique bakery. Chloe held her phone, her thumbs dancing across the screen. She looked up and manufactured a smile. "Ellie, we were in the neighborhood." "A pleasant surprise," I said, my voice steady. I held the door open. The smell of my home, lemon polish, old books, the lingering scent of the morning's coffee enfolded me. Their presence seemed to push the air out, making the rooms feel smaller. Marcus placed the box on the kitchen table next to the bowl of lemons from my tree. "Got you some of those almond croissants you like," he said, not meeting my eye. He was dressed for his office, a crisp blue shirt. He looked like a visitor. "Thank you, I'll put the kettle on." Chloe perched on the edge of a ladder-back chair, her eyes doing a swift, appraising circuit of my kitchen. They took in the chipped ceramic canisters, the thriving philodendron on the windowsill, the gallery of family photos on the wall. Her gaze felt like a soft cloth wiping a surface, checking for dust. I brought the teapot and my stoneware mugs to the table. Chloe watched me pour, her smile fixed. "So, Ellie," she began, her tone bright and false, "we have some exciting news. We've been doing a lot of planning." I stirred honey into my tea. "Oh." Marcus cleared his throat. "It's about your living situation, Mom." "My living situation is quite satisfactory," I said. "The roof doesn't leak. The garden is productive." Chloe's laugh was a short, brittle sound. "Of course it is. It's a darling house, but that's just it. It's a asterisk house asterisk, with stairs, and a yard that requires so much work. We worry about you here all alone." I looked at my son. His focus was on the steam rising from his mug. "I am not alone. I have my routines, my friends. This is my home." "We know," Marcus said, finally looking at me. His expression was the one he used for difficult clients, patient, slightly pitying. "But we've found a better solution, a wonderful solution. It's called the Cedars. It's a luxury senior living facility. It has a pool, activities, chef-prepared meals, no maintenance worries. You'd have your own lovely apartment." The words hung in the air between us. I felt a hollowing in my chest, as if my breath had been sucked out and replaced with lead. "A facility," I repeated, my voice flat. "Not a facility," Chloe corrected quickly. "A asterisk community asterisk. It's like a 5-star resort. We've toured it. The amenities are incredible. And the best part?" She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of her own plan. "We've already hired movers for your stuff. They're scheduled for next Monday. We can get you all packed and settled in no time." The world narrowed to the grain of the oak table under my fingertips. I felt the smooth, worn wood. I heard the tick of the clock on the wall. I saw my son's face, waiting for my grateful acquiescence. "You hired movers," I said slowly, "for my things, to move me out of my home." "It's for your own good, Mom," Marcus said, his voice taking on a firmer edge. "Be realistic. You're not getting any younger. What if you fall on those stairs? This house is too much for you. Think of the equity, too. This neighborhood is hot. We can get a fantastic price for it. That money can fund your care for decades." "My care," I echoed. The chill in my spine had spread, settling into my joints. "You have decided this. You have made arrangements. You did not think to ask me." Chloe waved a dismissive hand. "We knew you, resist. People your age always get sentimental about houses, but this is what's best. We're your family. We're taking care of it." I looked from her to Marcus. "My son, The boy I raised alone, whose college tuition I paid by taking extra paralegal work, whose face I had memorized every detail of since his birth. He would not hold my gaze. He studied his croissant as if it contained the secrets of the universe. The betrayal was not a sharp knife, but a slow, deep press, forcing the air from my lungs. "So," I said, my voice surprisingly calm in the ringing silence of my own head. "This is what happens. On Monday, strangers come to my home. They put my life into boxes. They take me to a resort, and you sell this house." "Exactly," Chloe said, mistaking my clarity for compliance. "It's all settled. We'll handle everything. You don't have to lift a finger." "I see." I lifted my mug and took a sip. The tea was lukewarm. "And if I say no?" Marcus sighed, the long-suffering sigh of a man burdened by responsibility. "Mom, don't be difficult. This is happening. We've signed the intent papers at the Cedars. The movers are booked. It's time." They stayed for another 20 minutes. They talked about the condo's new flooring, about a colleague's promotion, about the traffic. They filled the space with trivial noise, a barrier against the monumental thing they had just declared. I spoke little. I nodded. I let their words wash over me while the cold inside me hardened into something solid, something durable. Finally, they stood to leave. Chloe kissed the air near my cheek. "We'll be by Saturday to start sorting," she said. "Try to think about what you really want to take. The apartment is smaller, of course." Marcus gave my shoulder an awkward pat. "It's going to be great, Mom. You'll thank us later." I stood at the door and watched them drive away. The sun was still shining. A bee hummed around the rose I had been pruning. The world had not ended. It had simply cracked open, revealing a different, colder landscape beneath the familiar surface. I closed the door. The lock clicked with a final, solid sound. I walked back to the kitchen. I cleared their untouched pastries and their half-full mugs. I washed my single cup in the teapot. I dried them and put them away. Then I went to the living room and sat in my armchair, the one that had been my husband's. The afternoon light slanted across the rug, illuminating motes of dust in the air. I sat perfectly still. I felt the shape of the silence. I listened to the house, its settling creaks, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant call of a bird. My asterisk sounds. In my asterisk house. The initial shock had passed, leaving a clean, empty space behind my ribs. Into that space, a single, clear thought inserted itself, precise as a legal citation. This was not a discussion. This was an eviction notice delivered by the people I loved most, and like any unjust eviction, it required a response. I did not cry, I did not rage. I sat in the gathering dusk and I began to plan. The first step was simple. I reached for the phone on the side table. My fingers knew the number by heart. I listened to it ring once, twice. A familiar, no-nonsense voice answered. "Beverly Grant." "Beverly," I said, my voice even and clear. "It's Ellie. They've crossed a line. I need your help." There was a brief pause on the line, the kind of silence Beverly used to process information before shifting into action. I could picture her in her home office, glasses perched on her nose, a legal pad already materializing before her. "Start from the beginning, Ellie. Leave nothing out." I did. I recounted the Tuesday visit, the bakery box, the too bright kitchen. I relayed their words with the dispassionate tone of a court reporter entering testimony into the record. The luxury facility, the booked movers, the intent to sell my house. My own voice sounded foreign to me, calm and measured, while inside, that cold, hollow space began to vibrate with a new energy. When I finished, Beverly let out a low, slow whistle. "They booked movers. They actually said that to your face." They did. And Marcus just sat there. He provided the financial rationale, equity, care costs. I heard the scratch of a pen on paper. "Okay, first, do not sign anything. Nothing. Not a receipt, not a change of address form, certainly not any document from this Cedars place. Second, change the locks tomorrow. I'll give you the name of a good, discreet locksmith. Third, are you in your armchair?" "I am." "Good, stay there. I want you to listen to me very carefully, Alina Washington." She used my full name, the way she did when we were preparing a key witness. "You are not a helpless old woman. You are a retired paralegal with over 40 years of experience navigating exactly this kind of predatory behavior. They have made a critical error. They assumed you were weak. They assumed you were alone. They are wrong on both counts." Her words were a rope thrown into the void. I grasped them. What is the error, legally speaking? The error is that they have acted on assumption, not fact. They have no power of attorney. They are not co-owners of your home. They have initiated a course of action predicated on your compliance, which you have not given. This is attempted coercion, but we are not going to fight them on that front. A moral argument is messy. We are going to fight them on ground they understand: contract law and debt. The vibration inside me sharpened into a single, clear point. The loan. "The loan," she confirmed. Her voice was crisp. "The one you insisted we document, against my better advice about family and money, but for which I drafted the papers anyway because you are the most prudent woman I know. Do you still have them?" "They are in the fireproof box, in my closet." "Excellent. I need you to go get that box. Now, bring it to the phone." I placed the receiver down on the side table and stood. My legs felt steady. The walk to my bedroom was purposeful. The closet door opened with a familiar sigh. On the top shelf, behind a stack of wool blankets, was the gray metal box. It was heavier than I remembered. I carried it back to the living room, set it on the ottoman, and dialed the combination. The latches opened with a solid asterisk click asterisk. I picked up the phone. "I have it." "Open it. Find the loan agreement and the promissory note. Read me the date of execution and the paragraph titled Acceleration Clause." I shuffled through the orderly files: my marriage certificate, my husband's death certificate, my will notarized and witnessed. And there, in a separate folder labeled Marcus Condo, were the documents. I pulled them out. The paper was crisp, the ink dark. I found the date. It was signed on April 14th, 7 years ago. And the acceleration clause. I found the section. My eyes, trained for decades to parse dense text, scanned it. It states that the full remaining principal balance shall become immediately due and payable upon default of any terms. Default includes, but is not limited to, failure to make a scheduled payment or any act of fraud or malfeasance against the lender. I paused. Beverly, he never missed a payment. He set up an automatic transfer. The clause is broad. Any act of fraud or malfeasance against the lender. Attempting to defraud you of your primary asset to enrich himself could be argued as malfeasance. But we don't need to argue it. The beauty of a demand loan with a clause like that is that we can choose to call it. The agreement gives you, the lender, the right to demand full repayment at any time with 90 days written notice. He forgot that part, didn't he? He thought the autopay was the only requirement. I remembered that conversation. Marcus, frantic about losing the condo he and Chloe had set their hearts on. Me, insisting on structure. "It's just a formality, Mom asterisk," he'd said. "I'll pay you back every penny." I had insisted on the terms, and Beverly had drafted them to be unassailable. He had signed without really reading, eager for the check. "He forgot," I said. "Good, here is the plan. Tomorrow I will have a colleague from my old firm, who specializes in real estate and debt litigation, draw up a formal demand letter. It will cite the agreement, invoke the acceleration clause due to a material conflict of interest and attempted asset seizure, and demand full repayment of the outstanding balance, which is..." I checked the amortization schedule attached. $127,000. $127,000 within 90 days. It will be served to him at his place of work, officially, by a process server. The clinical nature of it was a balm. This was not a shouting match. This was a procedure. And if he cannot pay... Then, after 90 days, we initiate foreclosure proceedings on the collateral. His condo, Beverly said, which, as I recall, has appreciated quite a bit. The sale would more than cover the debt and legal fees. The key, Ellie, is that we are not threatening. We are executing a contractual right. We are turning their own weapon, the cold, transactional view of home and family, back on them. They see your house as an asset. We see his condo as collateral. Let them live in that equivalence. I looked down at the promissory note, at my son's rushed, confident signature. The hurt was still there, a dull ache beneath my ribs, but it was now compartmentalized, placed in a file separate from the task at hand. This will destroy him. No, Beverly corrected, her voice firm. He made choices. This is a consequence. He and Chloe tried to pack you up and sell your life. You are simply calling in a debt, which is more civilized. I did not answer. I looked around my living room at the books, the photographs, the well-wanted furniture. This was not an asset. It was my life, and I would defend it with every tool I had. What do I need to do? I asked. Tonight, nothing. Secure the documents. Tomorrow, after the locksmith, you will scan and email them to me. Then you wait. You do not answer his calls unless you wish to. You do not engage. You let the machinery work. Can you do that? Yes, I said. The word felt solid. I can do that. Then we are in motion. Try to sleep, Ellie. You have a busy week ahead. We said our goodbyes. I placed the documents back in the box, closed the latches, and returned it to the closet shelf. I walked to the kitchen and prepared a simple dinner. I ate at the table alone. The silence was no longer oppressive. It was tactical. Every sound was mine. The click of my fork on the plate, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant chime of the grandfather clock in the hall. Later in bed, I did not think of Marcus as my little boy. I thought of him as the other party in a breached contract. It was a colder way to think, but it allowed me to breathe. The plan was set. The first move was mine, though they did not know it yet. I closed my eyes, not with tears, but with the quiet focus of a chess player who has just advanced her first pawn. Sleep was not the restless, emotional turmoil I might have expected. It was a strategic retreat. I woke at my usual time, 6:30, with the first gray light at the window. The plan was a concrete object in my mind, a set of instructions to be followed. My feelings were set aside, filed away like a closed case. There was only the next step. I performed my morning routine with deliberate focus. The shower's hot water, the scent of my soap, the ritual of brewing a single cup of coffee. Each action grounded me in the present, in my own agency. I dressed in comfortable slacks and a knit shirt, clothes for a day of work, not for receiving pitying visitors. The locksmith, a taciturn man named Ray recommended by Beverly, arrived at 8. I showed him the front and back doors. He worked efficiently, his movements economical. The sound of his tools was sharp and purposeful. Within an hour, I held 3 new brass keys, cool and heavy in my palm. He handed me the invoice. I paid him in cash from the household fund I kept in a kitchen drawer. No record, no discussion. He nodded and left. The new locks were a silent, physical declaration. You are not welcome here without my consent. With that barrier established, I returned to the closet and lifted the fireproof box once more. This time, I brought it to the dining table, where the light was best. I opened it and removed the entire Marcus condo folder. I laid the contents out in a neat row. The loan agreement, the promissory note, the amortization schedule, the canceled check from my savings account, and even the thank you card he and Chloe had sent afterward, its embossed script now a bitter artifact. I began to read the loan agreement not as a mother, but as a paralegal. Beverly's drafting was, as always, impeccable. The terms were clear, the obligations unambiguous. The principal amount, $150,000. The interest rate, a modest 2%, well below market, a mother's concession. The term, 15 years. And there, in Section 4.2, was the clause Beverly had mentioned. The lender may, at her sole discretion, declare the entire unpaid principal sum and any accrued interest immediately due and payable upon 90 days written notice to the borrower. It was a demand loan, in essence. My discretion, my notice. My finger traced the lines of text. The memory surfaced, not as a flood of emotion, but as a clear, discrete record. He had stood in this very kitchen 7 years ago, his face strained with a panic I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. Chloe had been waiting in the car, he said. The condo was perfect, a foreclosure sale, a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Their financing had fallen through at the last minute. They needed a bridge loan just for 6 months to secure it. Mom, I would never ask, but we'll lose it. We have everything in escrow. It's everything we wanted. I had asked to see the paperwork. I had asked about their budget. His answers were vague, rushed. the desire to help my son Ward with a lifetime of financial caution. The compromise was the loan. "I will help you," I had said, "but it will be documented. It will have a repayment schedule. This is not a gift." He had agreed instantly, relieved. "Of course, Mom, whatever you need. It's just a formality." Beverly had drawn up the papers. I had presented them to him here at this table. He skimmed them, his knee bouncing with nervous energy. "Looks great," he'd said and signed. His signature was a hurried scrawl. He hugged me, his relief palpable. "You saved us. I'll never forget this." I looked from his rushed signature on the note to the thank you card. "To the most generous mom in the world, we love you, Marcus and Chloe." The disconnect between that sentiment and the current reality was absolute. The card was not evidence of love. It was evidence of a transaction he had chosen to forget until it suited him to remember only my supposed frailty. I took a deep breath. The recollection was archived. It informed my understanding but did not dictate my action. The facts on the paper were what mattered. I gathered the key documents, the agreement, the note, the schedule, and walked to the small home office I kept in the second bedroom. The room was orderly, a holdover from my working life. The scanner was a simple model connected to my computer. I turned it on. The green light glowed. I fed each page through, listening to the soft whir and click as it created a digital copy. On the screen, the documents appeared, sharp and legible. The scanned signatures looked even more official, more permanent. I opened my email. I typed Beverly's address. The subject line was, "Documents, Ray, Washington Loan, as discussed." I attached the files. In the body of the email, I wrote only, "Beverly, here they are. The originals are secure. The locks are changed. Awaiting your next instructions. Ellie." I hit send. The whoosh sound signaled the transfer. It was done. The evidence was in motion. My email chimed a moment later. A reply from Beverly. "Received. Perfect. Do not engage. The letter is being drafted today. Service will be tomorrow. Water your garden. Read a book. Be at peace. You have done everything right." I closed the laptop. The morning sun was fully up now, streaming into the dining room and warming the surface of the table where the physical documents still lay. I carefully returned them to the folder, and the folder to the metal box. I carried the box back to its place on the closet shelf behind the blankets. It was not hidden, but it was protected. It was secure. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood at the sink, looking out at my garden. The roses needed deadheading. The herbs were getting leggy. There was practical work to be done, work that yielded visible, tangible results. I finished my water and placed the glass in the sink. I took my gardening basket and shears from the hook by the back door. The new key turned smoothly in the new deadbolt. I stepped outside into the warmth of the morning. I knelt by the rose bed, the damp earth soaking into the knees of my slacks. I found a spent bloom and snipped it cleanly at the stem joint. I placed it in the basket. I moved to the next and the next. The work was rhythmic, methodical. With each cut, I was not removing something beautiful that was past its prime. I was making room for new growth. Inside the house, on my computer, a digital packet of papers sat in Beverly's inbox. Inside my closet, a metal box held the original covenant. And outside, on my knees in the soil, I tended my garden. All parts of the same system: preparation, protection, cultivation. I worked until the basket was full of faded blossoms. The past was cleared away. The ground was ready. Now I waited for the seeds of consequence to be sown. The basket of spent blooms was full. I carried it to the compost bin at the back of the yard, emptied it, and rinsed my hands at the outdoor faucet. The sun was higher now, warming the crown of my head. The physical work had been necessary, a way to occupy my hands while my mind processed the new reality. But now, the waiting began. Beverly said the letter was being drafted. Service would be tomorrow. I had been instructed to be at peace. It was the hardest directive to follow. I went inside, washed my hands more thoroughly at the kitchen sink, and put the kettle on. As it heated, my phone, sitting on the counter, buzzed with a text. It was from Marcus. "Hi, Mom, just checking in. We'll see you Saturday morning to help sort, okay? Maybe we can go to lunch after." I read the message 3 times. The casual tone, the assumption of access, the erasure of my stated objection. It was not a request. It was a scheduling notification. The anger I had carefully compartmentalized threatened to seep out. I placed my palms flat on the cool granite countertop and breathed. Reacting would be a mistake. Engaging would break the strategy. I did not reply. I turned off my phone completely. The silence it created was profound. The kettle whistled. I made a pot of peppermint tea. I was carrying it to the living room when a firm, familiar knock sounded at the front door. It was not the tentative tap of a neighbor. It was two solid raps. I knew it was Beverly even before I looked through the new peephole. I unlocked the door. She stood there, a large leather satchel over her shoulder and a determined look on her face. She held up a cardboard tray with two large paper cups. "I brought real coffee. Your tea can wait." "Thank you," I said, stepping aside. She walked in, her eyes immediately scanning the room, not as Chloe had, but as a general surveying a battlefield. "New locks feel solid," she asked, heading straight for the dining table. "They do." "Good." She set the coffee tray down, shrugged off her satchel, and pulled out a thick manila folder. "Sit, we have work to do." I retrieved 2 mugs and joined her. The table, which had held the evidence of my son's betrayal just hours before, was now becoming a command center. Beverly handed me a coffee. It was strong and black, just how I took it. She opened the folder. On top was a letter printed on crisp, heavyweight paper with the letterhead of Grant and Sterling, LLP. I recognized the firm. It was Beverly's old firm, prestigious and expensive. "This is the demand letter," she said, sliding it toward me. "Read it." I adjusted my reading glasses. The language was formal, precise, and devastatingly cold. "To Marcus Washington, asterisk. This law firm represents Alina Washington. We are in receipt of the executed loan agreement and promissory note dated April 14, between yourself as borrower and Mrs. Washington as lender, for the principal sum of $150,000. Pursuant to Section 4.2 of said agreement, and due to actions constituting a material conflict of interest and an attempt to unjustly encumber the lender's primary asset, our client hereby exercises her right to accelerate the debt. You are hereby formally notified that the full outstanding principal balance of $127,000, plus accrued interest of $1,842.50, for a total of $128,842.50, is due and payable in full to Mrs. Washington within 90 days of the date of this notice. Failure to remit payment in full by the deadline will result in our client pursuing all available legal remedies without further notice, including but not limited to the initiation of foreclosure proceedings on the property located at 2242 Waterside Drive, Unit 12B, which serves as collateral for this loan. All future communications regarding this matter should be directed to this office. It was signed by a senior partner, Robert Sterling. Below was a carbon copy line for Marcus's signature as proof of receipt. I read it again. The sum was correct. The address was his condo. The language left no room for interpretation. "A material conflict of interest," I said quietly. "Their attempt to sell your home against your will to fund their own plans absolutely qualifies," Beverly stated. "It's a solid, arguable point, but we don't even need to win that argument in court. The acceleration clause is unconditional. We are simply using the circumstance as our rationale for invoking it now. It makes the point. And the foreclosure is a real threat." "It is the next logical step," she said, taking a sip of her coffee. "The condo is the named collateral in the loan agreement. If he defaults on this demand, and he will default because no one has that kind of liquid cash, we file a lien. Then we initiate foreclosure. It's a process, Ellie. It takes months. But the moment this letter is served, his ownership of that shiny apartment is in jeopardy. The bank will be notified. His credit will be torpedoed. It's a financial heart attack." I imagined Marcus opening this letter. I imagined Chloe reading it over his shoulder. The coldness I felt was not toward them, but toward the situation itself. This was the language they had chosen to speak, the language of assets and equity. I was now replying in the same tongue, but with a superior vocabulary. "When will it be served?" "Tomorrow morning at his office," Beverly said. A process server will hand it to him personally. It needs to be done in a public, professional setting. It maximizes the shock and minimizes his ability to create an immediate scene. He will have to hold it together in front of his colleagues. I nodded. It was strategically sound. And what is my role between now and then? Your role is to be the immovable object. You have changed the locks. You will not answer his calls. You will, however, invite them to dinner. I looked at her. Dinner. For tomorrow night, after he's received the letter, after he's had a few hours to panic, to call Chloe, to realize you're not picking up the phone, he will be desperate to confront you. So you invite him on your turf. You control the time, the place, the narrative. You make a meal. You act as if nothing is wrong. It will unbalance him completely. I understood. It was the calm before the storm, but a calm of my own manufacturing. It would be a form of psychological warfare. What should I make? Beverly allowed a small, grim smile. Make his favorite, something that takes all day, something that smells like home. It will contrast beautifully with the legal poison he'll have in his briefcase. I knew immediately what I would make. My gumbo. It was his favorite since childhood. It required chopping, stirring, slow simmering. It was an act of care, or it had been. Now it would be part of the theater. I can do that, I said. I know you can. Beverly gathered the letter back into the folder. Now the practicalities. After service, he will likely try to contact you frantically. You will see the missed calls. You will ignore them. You will then, around 4 p.m., send a single text. I will dictate it. She pulled out her phone. It should say, Marcus, I'm making gumbo for dinner. You and Chloe should come by at 7. We can talk then. Nothing more. You are inviting them into the eye of the hurricane you have created. They will come because they will have no other choice. I committed the wording to memory. And when they arrive, you let them in, you serve the food, you let them talk, you listen. And when the moment is right, you explain the facts just as we have outlined them. You do not raise your voice, you do not apologize, you state your position. You are not throwing them out of your home. You are calling in a debt they agreed to. The symmetry is the punishment. We sat in silence for a moment. The plan was complete, a set of interlocking moves. It was legal, it was calculated, and it was, in its own way, ruthless. I felt no thrill, only a grim sense of necessity. Thank you, Beverly, for everything. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her grip was firm. This is what we do, Ellie. We protect what's ours. You taught me that a long time ago. Now drink your coffee. Then go buy okra and andouille. You have a performance to prepare for. The morning of the dinner was a lesson in focus. I woke, dressed, and drove to the market. I selected each ingredient with care. The freshest okra, firm and bright green, plump andouille sausage from the butcher counter, ripe tomatoes, bell peppers, onions, and celery. I bought a bag of shrimp and picked up a fresh loaf of French bread. The process was methodical, a physical checklist that kept my mind occupied with tangible tasks. Back home, I turned on the radio to a classical station and began the preparation. I chopped the holy trinity of onions, celery, and bell peppers. The knife was sharp, the rhythm steady. I sliced the andouille into coins, the paprika red casing stark against the cutting board. I trimmed the okra. The routine of it was meditative. This was not an act of love for my guests. It was an act of craftsmanship, the creation of a prop for the evening's performance. I made the roux, stirring flour and oil in my heavy Dutch oven over a medium-low heat. This was the foundation, requiring constant attention. The mixture transformed slowly from pale beige to the color of peanut butter, then to a deep, rich mahogany. The nutty aroma filled the kitchen. I added the vegetables, the sizzle a satisfying sound. Then the sausage, the tomatoes, the broth. I brought it to a simmer, covered it, and let time do its work. My phone, which I had turned on after returning from the market, began to vibrate on the counter. It was Marcus. The call went to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again. Chloe, I let it ring. I stirred the gumbo. Beverly's instructions were clear. Do not engage. The calls continued intermittently for the next 2 hours. I did not listen to the voicemails. Their increasing frequency was information enough. The letter had been served. At precisely 4 o'clock, I picked up my phone. I composed a new text message to Marcus, typing the words Beverly had dictated. Marcus, I'm making gumbo for dinner. You and Chloe should come by at 7. We can talk then. I sent it. The response was almost instantaneous. Mom, we need to talk now. What is this letter? This is insane. I did not reply. I added the shrimp and okra to the gumbo, letting them cook through. I set the table with my good china, the set my mother had left me. I placed the bread in a basket, set out butter-filled water glasses. At 6:30, I changed into a simple linen dress. I looked in the mirror. My face was calm, my silver curls neat. I looked like a grandmother preparing for a family dinner. The disconnect between that image and the reality was absolute. At 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Not a knock, a sharp, insistent buzz. I took a slow breath, smoothed my dress, and walked to the door. I opened it. Marcus stood on the porch, his face flushed, a manila folder crumpled in his hand. Chloe was beside him, her expression a mask of tight fury. The scent of my gumbo wafted out to greet them. Mom, Marcus said, his voice strained. We need to. Come in, I interrupted, my tone pleasant. Dinner is ready, please sit down. I turned and walked back toward the kitchen, not waiting to see if they followed. I heard the door close and their footsteps behind me. I ladled the gumbo into the serving tureen and carried it to the table. Sit, please. It's best while it's hot. They stood awkwardly by their chairs. Marcus dropped the folder on the table. It was the demand letter, now creased and bent. Mom, what is the meaning of this? This came to my office today. I took my seat. It is a legal notice. Now please sit. The gumbo will get cold. Chloe made a sound of exasperation. Ellie, this isn't a game. This is extortion. I looked at her, my head tilted slightly. Extortion is the practice of obtaining something through illegal threats. This is a contractual demand. They are different things. Now, will you have some bread? Marcus finally slumped into his chair, his eyes wide with disbelief. Chloe sat down stiffly, her back rod straight. I served the gumbo, filling their bowls first, then my own. The steam rose, carrying the complex, savory scent. This is delicious, Mom, Marcus said automatically, the old habit surfacing through his confusion. He took a bite, then put his spoon down as if it were poisoned. But we can't just eat. We have to talk about this. You can't just demand $128,000. Where did this even come from? I took a small spoonful of gumbo. The flavor was perfect, rich and layered. It came from the loan agreement you signed 7 years ago for the down payment on your condo, the one you said was just a formality. That was a loan between family, he sputtered. I've been making the payments. You have, and I am now calling the remaining balance due. The agreement allows for that at my discretion. Chloe leaned forward, her eyes hard. This is because of the movers, isn't it? Because we're trying to help you. This is a petty, vindictive stunt. I met her gaze. The timing is certainly related to your announcement. You presented me with a unilateral decision about my life and my property. I am presenting you with a unilateral decision about your debt. You see it as vindictive. I see it as consistent. You're going to make us homeless, Marcus's voice cracked. I am calling in a loan you agreed to repay, I said, my voice even. What you do to secure the funds is your concern. You were planning to sell my asterisk home to solve asterisk your asterisk perceived problem. I am simply presenting you with a different financial equation to solve. They stared at me, their food untouched. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft ticking of the clock. I continued eating. The gumbo was indeed very good. You can't do this, Marcus whispered, more to himself than to me. The law firm that sent that letter seems to believe I can. I suggest you consult your own counsel. They can explain the terms to you. I took another bite. How is work, Marcus? Any new projects? He looked at me as if I had spoken in a foreign language. The dissonance between the domestic setting, the familiar food, and the devastating legal document was completely disorienting him. That was the point. The rest of the meal passed in a fractured, surreal manner. They picked at their food. I asked polite, innocuous questions about their neighbors, the weather, a recent movie. They answered in monosyllables, trapped in a nightmare of their own making, unable to break the script of a civil dinner. Finally, Marcus pushed his chair back. I can't do this. We have to go. Of course, I said. Thank you for coming. There are leftovers if you'd like to take some. Chloe shot me a look of pure venom, snatched up the crumpled letter, and strode toward the front door. Marcus followed, his shoulders slumped. I did not get up to see them out. I listened to the door open and close. The lock clicked shut. I sat at the table, alone with the remnants of the meal. I finished my bowl of gumbo. The flavor was unchanged. I cleared the table, washed the dishes, and put everything away. The house was quiet again. The first act of the confrontation was over. They were off balance, angry, and scared, and I had not raised my voice once. I turned off the kitchen light and walked to my armchair. The plan was proceeding. Tomorrow, the reality would sink in deeper for them. But for tonight, my work was done. I had held my ground. I had broken bread with the enemy, and they had not been able to eat a bite. It was a small, cold satisfaction, but it was mine. The silence after they left was not empty. It was charged like the air before a summer storm. I slept deeply that night, a sleep born of mental exhaustion rather than peace. When I woke the next morning, the first thing I did was turn on my phone. The screen lit up with a barrage of notifications. 14 missed calls from Marcus, 8 from Chloe, 3 from an unknown number, several voicemail alerts, text messages stacked in a frantic column. I did not listen to the voicemails. I did not read the texts beyond the first few lines of the top one from Marcus. "Mom, you have to call me back. This is a disaster." I placed the phone face down on the kitchen counter and proceeded with my morning. Coffee, toast, the newspaper. I was halfway through the business section when the phone began to vibrate again, skittering on the granite. The screen showed Marcus's name. I watched it ring until it stopped. It started again immediately. This time, it was the unknown number. A part of me calculated it could be the process server confirming service at their home, as Beverly had said might happen. I decided to answer. "Hello." "Mom." Marcus's voice was a ragged burst of static, nearly a shout. He was on a cell phone, likely his, from a different number. In the background, I could hear Chloe's voice, high and sharp, though I couldn't make out the words. "Thank God you picked up. What have you done? A man just came to our door. He handed me papers. Legal papers." "I assume they were from Grant and Sterling," I said, my voice calm. "Did you review them?" "Review them? Mom, they're a notice of intent to foreclose. It says if I don't pay the full amount in 90 days, they'll start foreclosure proceedings on the condo. This can't be real." "It is real, Marcus. The demand letter outlined the consequences of non-payment. These papers are the next step in formalizing that process." There was a choked sound on the other end of the line. I heard him breathing heavily. Chloe's voice became clearer, as if she had snatched the phone. "Ellie, you vicious old woman, do you have any idea what you're doing? Our home, you're trying to take our home." "I am not trying to take anything," I replied, keeping my tone even and factual. "I am calling a legally binding loan due. Your home is the collateral you agreed to put up for that loan. These are the established procedures." "We'll fight this," she screamed. "We'll get a lawyer. You'll never win." "You are welcome to consult an attorney," I said. "I encourage it. They can explain the terms of the contract you signed. It is quite clear." "Mom, please," Marcus's voice came back on, pleading now. The anger had burned away into raw fear. "Please, you can't do this. We can't come up with that kind of money. You'll ruin us. Is that what you want, to ruin your own son?" The question hung in the air. I looked out my kitchen window at the rose garden. "You presented me with a plan that would have removed me from my home, sold my property against my will, and placed me in an institution. You presented it as a asterisk fait accompli asterisk. You hired movers. Did you consider that you were ruining my life?" "That's different," he cried. "That was for your own good. This is just its revenge, its evil." "It is a financial consequence, Marcus. You viewed my home and my autonomy as assets you could manage and liquidate. I am viewing your debt as a liability you must settle. The perspective is different. The principle is the same." "We're family." The words were a wail. "Yes," I said quietly. "We are. And you chose to treat me as a problem to be solved, not a person to be respected. This is my solution to the problem you created. Now I have things to attend to. I suggest you contact a financial advisor or an attorney. Goodbye." I ended the call. My hand was steady. I placed the phone back on the counter. It began to ring again instantly, the screen flashing with Chloe's name. I turned the ringer off. The silence returned, but it was a different silence now. It was the silence after a decisive action has been taken, a silence of consequence. I finished my coffee. I washed the cup and plate. I went to my home office and checked my email. There was a message from Beverly with the subject line, "Service confirmed." The body read, "Process server confirmed personal service on both parties at their residence at 8:07. All documents delivered. The clock is ticking. How are you holding up?" I typed a reply. "I am holding. They have made contact. Panicked. I followed the protocol. No engagement. I am fine." Her response came quickly. "Perfect. The next 48 hours are critical. They will swing between rage and desperate negotiation. Stay behind your walls, literally and figuratively. I'll check in tonight." I closed the laptop. The practical part of the day was ahead. I needed groceries. I considered that they might try to come to the house. The new locks were a comfort, but I decided a change of scenery was prudent. I would go to the garden center across town, a place I enjoyed but rarely visited midweek. It would keep me occupied and away from any potential confrontation. I gathered my purse and keys. As I locked my front door, I felt a profound sense of detachment. The storm was raging on the other side of the city, in their sleek, imperiled condo. Here on my porch, the sun was warm, the bees were busy in my flowers, and I was going to buy fertilizer. The disconnect was not a sign of callousness, I told myself. It was a necessary division. Their crisis was of their own making. My peace was of my own protecting. I got into my car and drove away from my quiet house. I did not look back. The phone, silenced, lay on the counter at home. Let it ring. Let the voicemail box fill. The machinery was in motion, and for now, my only job was to stay out of its gears and tend to my own garden. I returned from the garden center with 2 bags of fertilizer and a flat of impatience for the shaded corner near the fence. The trip had served its purpose. My mind was occupied with the simple calculus of soil and sunlight. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw no strange cars. The porch was empty. The house was as I had left it. I carried my purchases to the backyard and set them on the patio table. I went inside to change into my gardening clothes. The red light on my landline answering machine was blinking, a steady pulse in the quiet living room. I did not press play. I changed, poured a glass of water, and went back outside. I was on my knees, mixing compost into a planting hole, when I heard the car. It was not the purr of Marcus's sedan. This was a harsher sound, tires biting gravel as it jerked to a stop at the curb. Doors slammed. I did not look up. I placed an impatience plant into the hole and firmed the soil around it with my hands. Footsteps pounded up the porch steps. The doorbell rang, followed immediately by loud, insistent knocking. "Mom, open the door, we know you're in there." Marcus's voice was strained, ragged. I continued with the next plant. The knocking became a fist. "Ellie Washington, open this door right now," Chloe shrieked. I finished planting the flat of impatience, 12 plants in all. I watered them in with the hose, coiled the hose back on its reel, and gathered my empty trays and bags. The pounding had stopped. I assumed they had left. As I walked toward the back door, I saw them standing at the side gate. Marcus had opened it. They were in my backyard. I stopped, holding the empty flat. We looked at each other across the lawn. Marcus's face was pale, his tie loosened. Chloe's arms were crossed tightly over her chest, her mouth a thin line. "We need to talk. Now," Marcus said. His voice was lower, but it vibrated with tension. "You are trespassing," I said. "You may come to the front door and request to speak with me. You may not enter my property uninvited." "Your property," Chloe spat the words. "You're trying to steal ours." I ignored her. I walked past them, through the gate and to the back porch. I deposited the trays in the recycling bin. I unlocked the back door, walked inside, and left it open. An invitation of a sort. I went to the kitchen sink and washed my hands thoroughly, drying them on a towel. I heard them enter and shut the door behind them. I walked into the living room and took my seat in my armchair. It was my position of authority. They stood in the center of the room, looking like petitioners in a court that had already ruled against them. "Sit if you wish," I said. They remained standing. Marcus pulled a sheaf of papers from a leather folder. "I've spoken to 2 lawyers. Do you know what they told me?" I could guess. They said the loan agreement is ironclad. They said the acceleration clause is valid. They said if you pursue this, we will lose. His voice broke on the last word. They said our only hope is to convince you to change your mind. "I see," I said. "How could you?" he whispered. The anger was gone, replaced by a bewildered hurt. "How could you do this to us, to me?" I looked at him, my son, standing in the home where I had raised him. The grief was there, a stone in my throat, but I swallowed it. This was not the time for sentiment. "You arrived here last Tuesday," I began, my voice level. "You informed me that you had hired movers to empty my house. You told me you had chosen a nursing home for me. You presented the sale of my home as a financial benefit to yourselves. You did not ask. You announced. You treated me as a minor, as an incompetent, as an asset to be managed. How could you do that to me?" "It wasn't like that," Chloe interjected. "We were thinking of you. You were thinking of my equity. You were thinking of a solution that removed an inconvenience from your lives. You attempted to make me homeless, Chloe. I am simply holding you to a contract." "It's not the same thing," Marcus cried. "It is precisely the same thing. You used a position of assumed familial authority to attempt to dispossess me. I am using a position of legal authority to call you to account for a debt. The mechanism is different. The principle of enforcing a one-sided decision is identical." He stared at me, the papers dangling from his hand. "So this is it? You're just going to take our home? You're going to make us pay for trying to help you?" "I am not taking anything. The agreement you signed states that your condo is collateral. If you cannot repay the loan as demanded, the collateral will be used to satisfy the debt. Those are the terms, the ones you called just a formality. You are now facing the formality." Chloe took a step forward. "We'll declare bankruptcy. We'll ruin our credit for years. Is that what you want?" "What I want," I said slowly, "is to remain in my home. What I want is to not be packed away like a piece of old furniture. You made that impossible. Your choices have consequences. Bankruptcy is one possible consequence. Selling your condo quickly to pay the debt is another. Your decisions from this point are yours to make." The fight seemed to drain out of Marcus. He sank onto the sofa, the papers spilling from his hands onto the floor. He put his head in his hands. "You've won, Mom, okay? You've made your point. It was a stupid, insensitive idea. We were wrong. Please just stop this. Withdraw the demand. I'll cancel the movers. We'll never mention it again." The plea was sincere in its desperation. For a moment, I saw the little boy who used to crawl into this chair with me to read. The stone in my throat grew heavier, but the woman who had sat frozen at this table days ago, hearing her fate dictated to her, spoke next. "No," I said. His head jerked up. "What?" "I will not withdraw it. The demand stands. The 90 days began yesterday. You need to focus on your options, not on changing my mind." Chloe's composure shattered. "You cold-hearted bitch. He's your son." "He is," I agreed, standing up. The movement signaled the end of the audience. "And he is an adult who signed a legal document. He is an adult who conspired to commit what amounts to elder financial abuse. I am treating him like the adult he insists on being. Now you will leave my home. Do not come back unless I invite you." Marcus stood, his movements slow, like those of an old man. He looked at me, and I saw no trace of the condescending man from Tuesday. I saw defeat and a dawning, horrible understanding. He had underestimated me. He had mistaken kindness for weakness and silence for compliance. He understood now. He bent and mechanically gathered the papers from the floor. Without another word, he turned and walked to the front door. Chloe followed, shooting a last, blistering look over her shoulder. The door opened and closed. I did not move from the center of the room. I listened to their car start and drive away. The confrontation was over. I had stated my terms. I had not wavered. The emotional climax had passed, and I was still standing. I walked to the window and looked out at the empty street. The afternoon sun was golden on the pavement. In their condo across town, a different reality was taking hold, one of panic, of frantic phone calls to realtors, of the terrible arithmetic of debt. Here, in my quiet living room, there was only the faint scent of earth from my gardening clothes and the solid, unassailable fact of my own sovereignty. The line had been drawn. They were on the other side of it. The silence after their departure was different this time. It was not the shocked silence of betrayal, nor the strategic silence of planning. It was the quiet of a concluded matter. I felt no triumph, only a deep, weary certainty. They understood the position. The rest was mechanics. The phone did not ring again that day or the next. The stream of frantic messages ceased. This new silence was more telling than any outburst. It was the sound of reality being accepted, however bitterly. I went about my days. I tended the garden. I attended my book club meeting, where I listened to discussions of novels and shared a recipe for zucchini bread. I did not speak of my son. My friends, perceptive women who had lived long lives, asked no probing questions. They simply made sure my teacup was always full. A week after the confrontation, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Marcus. The tone was flat, devoid of emotion, as if dictated by a lawyer. "We have listed the condo. The realtor believes we can get a quick sale above the loan payoff amount. We will remit the full balance owed to you upon closing. We expect to be out within 30 days. I read it twice. I typed a reply. Acknowledged, please have your attorney coordinate the payoff with Grant and Sterling. I did not ask where they would go. I did not offer good wishes. It was a business transaction. To add anything else would be hypocrisy. Another week passed. Beverly came over for lunch. We sat at the dining table with sandwiches and iced tea. "The firm received a call from their attorney," she said. "They've accepted the terms. They're not fighting it. They're just trying to minimize the damage. The condo is already under contract. Cash offer, slightly below asking, but enough to cover everything." "That was fast," I said. "Desperation motivates people," she replied. "A foreclosure on your credit report is a career-ending event in his field. A quick sale is a private shame. They chose the private shame." I nodded, taking a bite of my sandwich. The taste was normal. The world had not altered its fundamental properties. Bread was still bread. Shame was still shame. "Do you want to see it?" Beverly asked after a moment. "See what?" "The condo, while they're packing. I have no ethical qualms about driving by. It might give you closure." I considered this. Closure was not the word I would use. Curiosity, perhaps, a need to witness the tangible evidence of the consequence. "Yes," I said. "I think I should see it." We drove across town later that afternoon. Beverly parked her sedan on the street, a few buildings down from their modern high-rise. We had a clear view of the main entrance. We did not have to wait long. A uniformed moving truck was parked at the loading dock. Two men in shirts with a logo were carrying a large, flat cardboard box, the kind used for art or mirrors. Then Marcus emerged from the lobby doors. He was dressed in old jeans and a t-shirt. He was supervising, pointing where boxes should be placed on a dolly. His shoulders were slumped. He looked smaller. Chloe came out next, holding a banker's box. She placed it on the ground and began speaking sharply to Marcus, gesturing back toward the building. Even from a distance, her posture was rigid with anger. He shook his head, turned away from her, and went back inside. She stood alone for a minute, her arms wrapped around herself, staring at nothing. Then she picked up the box and placed it on the dolly with exaggerated care. They were not packing my things. They were packing their own. The expensive sofa, the sleek dining set, the artwork chosen for its trendy appeal. They were dismantling the perfect life they had built, the life my loan had helped launch. The movers worked with efficient disinterest. It was just another job. I watched as they brought out a large, abstract painting in a gilded frame. Chloe hovered near it, her hands fluttering as if to protect it. I remembered her mentioning it once, how much it had cost, how it was an investment. It was loaded into the truck with the same care as the mattress and the book boxes. "Where will they go?" I asked quietly. "Short-term rental, I'd imagine," Beverly said. "Then an apartment, A much smaller one. The proceeds from the sale will go to you and to pay their realtor. They'll have little left for a down payment. They'll be renters. The symmetry was complete. They had planned to make me a renter in a controlled facility. They were now becoming renters themselves by necessity. The poetic justice was not lost on me, but it tasted ashy, not sweet. We sat for 20 minutes, watching the flow of their possessions from the building into the gaping mouth of the truck. It was a slow-motion unraveling. Finally, I had seen enough. "We can go now," I said. Beverly started the car and pulled away from the curb. I did not look back. The image was fixed in my mind. Marcus in his t-shirt, Chloe with her box, the impersonal movers, the truck that was not at my house. That evening, I sat in my armchair. My house was quiet, whole, undisturbed. Every object was in its place by my design. The only boxes here were in the attic, containing Marcus's childhood things I had saved. I thought of the anger on Chloe's face, the defeat on Marcus. I felt the heavy stone of sadness, but it was clean. It was not mixed with fear or helplessness. It was the sadness of a line that had been drawn and could not be uncrossed. It was the sadness of a choice that, while necessary, still meant loss. I had not wanted this. I had wanted my son to visit, to care, to respect the home I had made. But he had wanted something else. And so this was the result. The movers were at his door, not mine. The life being packed away was his. I had protected my own. In the quiet of my living room, that had to be enough. It was, finally, a fact I could live with. The morning the moving truck was scheduled to finish, I woke at dawn. The house held its usual pre-dawn quiet, but the day felt marked, significant in a way I could not ignore. I performed my morning routine with extra care, as if preparing for a ceremony. I dressed in a simple, comfortable dress and fixed my hair. I wanted to be seen as I was, composed, rooted at home. Beverly arrived at 9, carrying a pitcher of fresh lemonade and 2 glasses. "For the vigil," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. We took our places on the porch swing. The morning was bright and clear, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of my roses. It was a beautiful day for a leaving. We did not have to wait long. The same moving truck we had seen days before was already parked at their curb, its ramp extended like a tongue. The movers were loading the last of the large items. We watched from a distance, sipping the tart lemonade. It was a spectator sport with no winners, only consequences unfolding. Then Marcus's car pulled up behind the truck. He got out alone. He spoke briefly to the foreman, handed him an envelope, and pointed back toward the building. Then he turned and began walking down the sidewalk, toward my house. My grip tightened on my glass. Beverly placed a steadying hand on my arm for a moment, then removed it. "Do you want me to go inside?" she asked. "No," I said. "Stay." He walked up the path to my porch. He looked older. His face was drawn, his eyes hollow. He had not shaved. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, looking up at Beverly and me on the swing. The gulf between us, measured in those 3 steps, felt oceanic. "Mom," he said. His voice was rough. "Marcus." He glanced at Beverly, then back at me. Can we talk, just for a minute?" I considered this. The business was concluded. The truck was at his empty condo. There was nothing left to negotiate, but perhaps there was something else. "You may speak," I said. He climbed the steps slowly, but did not attempt to sit. He leaned against the porch railing facing us. He looked at the lemonade pitcher, the 2 glasses, the peaceful setting. The contrast with the chaos at his curb was stark. "They're finishing up," he said, stating the obvious. "We're out. The closing is tomorrow. The funds will be wired to your lawyer's trust account." "I have been informed," I said. He nodded, swallowing hard. "We found a short-term rental, an apartment complex on the south side, month to month." I did not respond. He was not sharing information for my benefit. He was narrating his defeat, needing to hear it aloud. "Chloe, she's staying with her sister for now." He looked down at his shoes. "She blames me for signing the papers, for not handling you better." The phrase, handling you, hung in the air. It confirmed everything. I took a slow sip of my lemonade. "I don't know what to say," he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. It was a stupid, arrogant, terrible idea. I see that now. I thought it was the right thing. I thought we were helping. You thought you were managing an asset, I corrected quietly. You thought you were solving a problem. I was never a problem, Marcus. I was your mother. He flinched. I know that now. It's too late, isn't it? The question was not about the loan or the condo. It was about the fracture between us. I looked at him, this man I had raised, and felt the immense weight of the broken thing between us. It is too late for things to be as they were, I said, choosing my words with care. You made a choice that showed me how you see me. I made a choice that showed you I see you as an adult bound by his contracts. We cannot unsee those things. So that's it, he asked, a tear tracing a path through the stubble on his cheek. We lose our home and I lose my mother. You have not lost me, I said, but you have lost the right to my trust. You have lost the right to make decisions for me. You have lost the expectation of my compliance. Our relationship, if it continues, will be on different terms. Terms of mutual respect, or there will be no relationship at all. He was crying openly now, not sobbing, but with silent tears he made no effort to wipe away. I don't know how to fix this. You cannot fix it today, I said. Perhaps you start by building a life that does not require managing mine. Perhaps you start by learning that respect is not something you command by being a son or a success. It is something you earn through action. You have a chance to earn it back over time, a long time. He looked at me, searching my face for the softness he had always taken for granted. I did not offer it. The softness had been incinerated in the fire of his betrayal. What remained was clear, hard, and honest. I hope you learn from this, Marcus, I said, echoing the words I had practiced in my mind. Not just about loans and contracts, but about family, about dignity. I hope one day you understand why I had to do this. He nodded, a jerky, broken motion. He pushed himself away from the railing. I should go, sign the final walkthrough papers. Yes, I said. He took one last look at me, at Beverly, at my house, my porch, my life, all of it intact, all of it denied to him now. Then he turned and walked back down the path. He did not look back as he got into his car. He drove past the moving truck, which was now closing its rear door, and disappeared down the street. Beverly let out a long, slow breath. You were perfect, she said. Clear, firm, not cruel. It felt cruel, I admitted, the first crack in my composure. It was just, she corrected. There is a difference. He felt the cruelty of his own actions reflected back at him. That is not your doing. We sat in silence for a while, finishing our lemonade. The movers secured the truck, got into the cab, and drove away. The curb in front of their building was empty. The event was over. The sun was high now, warming the porch boards. The roses were in full bloom, a riot of color against the green. A new blossom had opened on the Madame Hardy since the day I had been pruning it when this all began. I pointed it out to Beverly. See, I said, new growth. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Indeed, ready to go inside. The book club is meeting here tomorrow. We should plan the menu. I stood up, collecting the glasses. Yes, I said, let's do that. We went inside, leaving the empty street and the bright morning behind. The door closed on the past. The business of the future, of my future, could now begin. The morning of the book club dawned clear and warm. I was in the kitchen by 7, not out of anxiety, but with a sense of pleasant industry. The house was already clean, but I wiped down the surfaces again, enjoying the smell of lemon polish. I arranged the living room furniture to accommodate the circle of chairs we preferred. I set out a stack of my mother's china dessert plates on the sideboard. The book we had read was a historical novel about a group of women in a small town. I had finished it, making notes in the margins as I always did. The story was about resilience, about building something lasting in the face of change. The themes felt close to the bone, but in a way that was comforting, not painful. By 10 o'clock, the food was prepared. A platter of tea sandwiches, a bowl of fruit salad, a simple pound cake I had baked the day before. I made a large pot of coffee and set out a selection of teas. The preparations were complete. I stood in the center of my living room and looked around. The sun streamed in, illuminating the dust motes in the air. The room was ready. I was ready. Beverly was the first to arrive, as usual. She let herself in through the back door, calling out a hello. She carried a bouquet of sunflowers from her garden. "For the victor," she said, handing them to me. "It's not about victory," I said, taking the flowers and finding a vase. "I know," she said, her tone softening. "It's about peace, but peace won is still an accomplishment." She began helping me put the final touches on the food platters. The other women arrived in twos and threes. Patricia, a retired librarian with a sharp wit. Lena, who had been a teacher and still carried herself with a patient grace. Sandra, an artist whose hands were always stained with paint or clay. Miriam, who had run her own business for 40 years. They were women of my generation, their hair gray or white, their faces lined with experience and laughter. They brought with them the comfortable noise of long friendship. The living room filled with the sound of their voices, the clink of cups, the rustle of pages as they pulled out their books. We settled into our chairs. For the first hour, we discussed the novel. We talked about the protagonist's choices, the historical setting, the author's prose. The conversation was lively, intelligent, and mercifully focused on a world other than my own. After the formal discussion broke down into general chatter, we moved to the dining table for food. Plates were filled. Compliments were given on the cake. The talk turned to personal matters, a granddaughter's graduation, a planned trip to the coast, a recipe for a new salad dressing. Patricia turned to me. "Your garden is looking spectacular, Ellie. The roses are breathtaking this year." "Thank you," I said. "I've been spending more time out there. It's good for the soul." "It shows," Lena said, smiling. "There's a particular vibrancy to it." There was a brief, comfortable silence. These women were not fools. They knew something had happened. The sudden absence of Marcus, the slight hardening around my eyes, the new, unshakable calm at my center, they noticed. But they respected my privacy. Their support was shown in their presence, in their normalcy, in their refusal to treat me as anything but the Ellie they had always known. After lunch, we moved to the back porch and the garden. Some took their coffee and cake outside, sitting in the wrought iron chairs. Beverly and I stood by the rose bed. The others dispersed along the paths, admiring the blooms, the herbs, the tidy vegetable plots. Miriam joined us, sipping her tea. "You know, Ellie," she said, her voice low, "when my children tried to put me in one of those communities, I let them. I thought it was easier. I regret it every day. My apartment is nice, but it's not my home. You did what I didn't have the courage to do." I looked at her. I had not known this. "I'm sorry, Miriam." "Don't be," she said, her gaze firm. "I'm telling you so you know you're not alone, and so you know you were right. This," she said, gesturing to the house, the garden, the women talking and laughing on the lawn, "this is what we fought our whole lives to build. No one gets to take it from us without a fight." Beverly nodded in agreement. The validation was quiet, profound, and without pity. It was the recognition of one soldier to another. The afternoon wore on. The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the grass. One by one, the women gathered their things, hugged me goodbye, and made their way home. Promises were made for the next month's meeting at Lena's house. Finally, only Beverly remained. We cleared the last of the dishes together, working in the companionable silence of decades. The house was quieting, settling back into its evening rhythm. "The funds cleared the trust account today," Beverly said, drying a plate. "The loan is repaid with interest. The matter is legally closed." I placed the last cup in the cupboard. "Thank you, Beverly, for everything." "You did the work," she said. "I just provided the tools." She left soon after, with a wave and a reminder to call if I needed anything. I locked the door behind her. I walked through the empty house. The dining table was clear. The living room chairs were back in their usual places. The only signs of the day were the vase of sunflowers on the table and the lingering scent of coffee and perfume. I went to my armchair and sat. The evening light was soft and golden. I picked up the historical novel from the side table, but I did not open it. I simply held it, feeling its weight in my hands. I thought of Miriam's words. I thought of the easy laughter of my friends. I thought of the new rose blooming outside. I thought of Marcus in his temporary apartment facing the life he had chosen. Here in my chair in my house, I faced the life I had chosen to defend. It was not a life of excitement or great wealth. It was a life of small rituals, of deep roots, of chosen family. It was a life of autonomy. The battle to keep it had been brutal and sad, but it was mine. The quiet in the house was no longer the silence of shock or strategy. It was the silence of peace, earned and hard-won. I opened the book and began to read. The story was already over, the conflict resolved. I turned the pages, following the characters into their well-deserved rest. Outside, the first fireflies began to wink in the gathering dusk. All was calm. All was secure. The chapter was closed.